Welcome to Cool Explorations.
Canada is a country divided, right down the middle. East versus West is the mentality. Trudeau and his crazy policies and actions has further grown this divide to the point of not being able to repair it, or at least giving very little chance. The previous installment looked at a few of these reasons, and now this particular one will further study the matter. Carbon tax and environmental policies. If you're going to take a look at Canada.ca under their environmental tab, you would see an excuse given for the carbon tax to make these polluters pay, since we can see the effects of their carelessness. Now, this is buying into the whole global warming and climate change hoax. I'm not saying that we don't have climate change or anything like that. I am just saying that for all the hundreds of scientists who have claimed that it is in fact a natural phenomenon, that is the position that I take on that. This natural phenomenon is what is changing our climate. I don't believe that it's been all of us CO2 and carbon and all that. Carbon's been around for ages. We have seen this many, many times before in history. Is man to blame for the previous ice age? Is dinosaur poop responsible for climate change? Or was it simply a result of the Great Flood? I, for one, believe it was the Great Flood that caused all of that. Now, the Earth is shifting its temperatures again, and this is a natural cycle of the Earth. We should treat the environment with respect. 100% we should. With that being said, though, we cannot destroy our economy at the cost of little bits of the environment. We need to be able to have an economy to survive. The environment is changing on its own anyway. We do have to have caution, we do have to have respect for the environment, but we also need money to survive, and without jobs and the economy, that isn't going to happen. What happens then is we then see a rise in poverty and homelessness, which we are currently seeing already right now, thanks to Trudeau's blind following of the Greta lunacy, backed by many large foundations around the world who simply want to destroy the world economy to set up a world state. Yes, this is a real tactic. It's being used by the UN right now. They want to eliminate borders and have open migration between countries. Ultimately, this will give the UN complete control over the world, something that is currently happening, and Trudeau is on board with, signing onto the agreement with many other nations despite the large amount of opposition to such a proposal in Canada. With a rise in poverty comes a rise in crime rates, drug usage rates, overdoses, suicides, stress, and anxiety, which again is exactly what we are seeing in the West, particularly in Alberta. Then we can take a look at the actual carbon tax portion of all this. It has been proven to not be a deterrent to anyone. It does not limit our use of carbon-causing products. In fact, all that it has done is destroyed farmers and natural resource sectors. It has cost many jobs and made life so difficult for so many Canadian citizens as a whole, because it also increases the cost of gas, it increases the cost of food, of all the different products that any of us will want. It increases that cost, which is making it even harder for us Canadians to get by, especially in the West, where we're seeing things like Halliburton leaving, costing another 1,500 jobs to our provinces. Not only that, but Trudeau has a federal tax that he applies to the carbon tax. A federal tax on a tax. This is crazy. Why charge a tax on a tax if it is not really a money grab? Because it is a money grab, which it's exactly what this is. As if Canadians can afford more taxes on top of their already high tax rates, claiming to be trying to grow the middle class. His method of accomplishing this is to tax the wealthy until it becomes a middle class, and then tax the middle class to the point of them become lower middle class, or lower middle class becoming impoverished. This is all part of the carbon tax. It is hitting all of our pocketbooks hard. And despite the fact that most provinces are not for it, he has chosen to keep it and maintain it, instead of listening to the population. By taking money from Canadians, Trudeau can then control us. Instead, we are seeing higher suicide rates, such as a suicide on December 2nd, 2019 here. A man shot himself on the steps of the Alberta legislature. If things are not changed in the West, we will continue to see more of this. The Star claims that for every 1% increase in unemployment, 16 more Albertans die by suicide. This is becoming a pandemic, to which our Prime Minister seems to want to do nothing to help. He wants to pretend it isn't happening and turn a blind eye, which is what he's done to the West for years now. It is a large part of the Western alienation plan that he has in play. Prime Minister Trudeau has already claimed in an interview years ago that Alberta is the problem in Canada, a statement that gives insight behind the policies he has put into place to destroy Alberta and the rest of the West. It goes beyond that, however, as it really will end up affecting the whole country, which again is what the UN wants. Trudeau wants his UN seat so badly that he is more than willing to do whatever he can to enable them to accomplish their globalist agenda. Weakens countries to the point of having no choice but to submit. His bid for a UN Security Council seat has clouded any last ounce of judgment that Trudeau has, which was very little to begin with. He even went so far as to vote with North Korea and Egypt, a scary thought, I know, against Israel, who has been a long-time ally. Way to stab those allies in the back, which goes against everything that Harper has done and what he accomplished when he was in power. He made Israel become one of our closest allies. And now we have a detrimental result, as it also angers our US allies, someone we need to protect us since our army is so pathetic and has all second-hand equipment. None of this matters, however, when you are a puppet for a globalist UN and globalist cabals around the world. It also does not seem to matter that most Western Canadians want nothing to do with the UN. Since when has anything the West said ever mattered to Trudeau or the UN or Ottawa? Another way that Trudeau plans to help the UN is through his replacement migration in Canada, which has been happening now for years. It's just picking up its pace now. The government has just been ramping up these efforts since Trudeau came into power and has promised more of it. They would claim that they are trying to increase our population, but what they're really doing is they're doing this with mainly Muslim nations in mind. They have brought such a large Muslim population into the country. And there is a YouTube video, I can't remember the YouTuber, but she is part of the Arabic nations, and she actually explains the whole policy behind the Muslims, and when they come into a country, they slowly will take over piece by piece, and they will take out figureheads like Don Cherry one by one until we basically become a Muslim nation, which is kind of scary because of Sharia law and all that kind of stuff. I don't need any of that here. The Muslims I do know are great people. I don't have an issue with that in itself. It's Sharia law and the fact that they're being used to take over the country. They are basically using these Muslims to replace our white population, and yet white people dare not speak out. Otherwise, they are declared racist, bigots, or white elitists. They're attacking us from all sides. Now, when we do stand up, that is exactly what happens. We all get attacked from all sides. I'm expecting some of that from my having stated this, even though I'm definitely not a racist or a bigot. I've got lots of friends of all races. Now we see our high-up figureheads being attacked and fired, which is an attempt to deculturalize Canada, as that video had stated. Now we see our high-up figureheads, like Don Cherry. I mean, he's an example of this. He was fired for asking all people, yes, immigrants in particular, and maybe he should have worded it better, to wear a poppy in respect for our veterans. Many Muslims do refuse to wear a poppy due to the feeling that vets who fought against them in previous wars are not worth honoring. They're not the only ones who refuse to wear them, though. There are others who choose not to as well. And Don Cherry was addressing these people as well. It wasn't just immigrants. It was everybody in general. I know he was pointing out immigrants, which was maybe tactless. He should have come at it from a different angle, and even Don Cherry has said he should have come at it from a different angle. There were Muslim complaints, though, and so he was fired. And this was wrong, especially since we saw the Jessica News thing right afterwards, where she was on her talk show, and it was an opinion network, which is exactly what Don Cherry's program was. And she was insulting hockey players and white people, and it was just, her comments were definitely bigoted, and were definitely causing more division than they were helpful. And nothing happened to her, of course, because, well, she was speaking out against white people. And here is the rub that I have with immigration. When you immigrate to Canada, assimilate, as we would be expected to do if we moved to another country. I myself would try to go along with the cultures of the country that I'm in, not try and make them change for me. You don't come to a country and try to get rid of their holidays, to minimize their religious groups, or to force law changes that accommodate you. If you move to another country, like Canada, and we've welcomed you, don't abuse our hospitality. Accept our traditions for what they are. Don't try to slam those or get rid of them and make it so we can't say Merry Christmas anymore. Merry Christmas, by the way, as that is coming up here. But try to participate in some of these things, or if you don't want to participate in it, well, at least keep your mouth shut. We don't need you coming in here and complaining about our holidays or our traditions or anything like that. We respect you, so you need to respect us. Trudeau, when he brings people in here, he doesn't use very much screening. He's promised to accept way more immigrants into the country. He wants to build our population up, is his excuse there. But really, it is that Western alienation that I've been talking about here. He's trying to displace us to make it so that we are the minority, and he knows that because he's brought these people in, that they're more likely to vote Liberal. So it's a vote grab for him, and it forces us to just kind of rethink, and it actually builds up racism, is what it does, because then we feel threatened as a nation. But his lack of screening has also led to a higher risk of terrorist attacks within Canada, which is something we want to avoid. We've seen it too much in other countries. I would rather keep that out of Canada, but I know it is coming. And so we do need to be prepared for that. He knows that many of these immigrants will vote Liberal, as I mentioned. So he does force provinces to accept these immigrants and take over communities in Canada. You look at Fort McMurray, they're becoming a huge Muslim population base there. It's really, really starting to control that city. It is not only Muslims, though. We see Chinese immigrants set up in Chinatowns in cities like Calgary and Vancouver, for example. And with more control being given over to the Chinese, we are seeing more triad activity in Canada. Drugs are pouring in, and they are even producing them in Canada now, which is extremely sad. The main problem with these drugs is the fentanyl and carfentanil that has been lacing these drugs. That's something the Chinese are using in making these, and the result has been a lot more overdoses and deaths in relation to drug use, because doses that they would normally find okay are suddenly not okay because of these extra drugs that have been mixed in with it. It's made it too strong. Immigration in and of itself is not a bad thing. It is with a lack of caution, though, and screening. And that's what's caused the problems we see here. As long as the Liberals are in power, this won't change. In fact, the problem's only going to grow worse. None of what I have written about or spoken about here is intended to be racist or bigoted. It is a simple observation, so please don't take offense to it. I have nothing against anybody of any culture. Like I say, I have many friends who are. I know many Arabs. I know many East Indians. I know many natives. I don't have a problem with any of them. Some of these people that I know are Muslims, and I have no problem with that. It's just when they're not coming over here and being contributing members of society or contributing members in our communities. They're not helping build it. They're destroying it by either not having jobs, which I don't think is right, or by not participating in things. They're more bashing our traditions and cultures, and that's harmful, and that is something that I do have a problem with. But they're also not trying to force change on my location right now, which I'm very thankful for. To anybody who's in the region who is an immigrant, thank you for not trying to make changes like this. Thank you for taking our hospitality and welcoming it. I only wish that this were true across Canada as a whole. I want to see a free country, a country where we can feel safe again, where I and you can feel confident in our government. Sadly, I don't know if this will ever be the case in our country again. Trudeau has just made such a divide. But I can certainly hope that we will see that again.
Remember to like and subscribe.